So you got the 2019 Giant Trance 29. So their 29er version of their trail bike. Trance 27 is a good bike. Doesn't compete with the Rain, obviously. The Rain's their enduro bike. The Trance is their mid-travel trail bike, which is a really good bike. This Trance 29er is obviously stepping back into the 29 world. So it's a 66.5 degree head angle. There's a medium size. The reach is 442 millimeters. So a little bit on the short side for a medium, especially with kind of what they're going for here. So from what I've read, it's like the all mountain bike that'll climb everything, but still punches above its weight on the descents. Now I rode it all day yesterday, and it's definitely efficient. It's definitely a good climber. So it's got the Eagle GX drivetrain. It's got 115 millimeters of travel on the back with the Fox DPS Performance Elite shock. So it's their top DPS shock. So obviously the shocks get better, but the Performance Elite version of the DPS and Performance Elite version of the Fox 34, so that's 130 mil at the front. It's got 3 position lockout and independent low speed compression, and obviously air adjust and air volume adjust. Guide brakes, 180 on the front, 160 on the back. 29-inch carbon wheels. So I don't think I really like carbon wheels. I've had poor experiences in the past, but with that aside, they're quite unforgiving. So they're very, I think it adds to the twitchiness. of this bike. So I rode it all day yesterday on some reasonably rough trails, stuff that would definitely test it. If it's meant to punch above its weight, it would definitely show it out there. So it was Anstey's Hill. I set it up with 90 psi to start with in the fork, which was a little bit much. I dropped it to 85 and I dropped it to 80. I ended up back up at 85. The rear shock started at 185 psi, went down, back up, down a little bit more again, ended up back up, so 185, which was about 25% sag in the rear. I've read a few reviews saying guys have been running it in the deeper sag, didn't like it. In the less sag, it's much better, it carries its speed better, and it mows over the bumps better, which is definitely the case. So 25% sag, definitely mows over the bumps better. The reach is 442 mil, so it's quite short for a medium. In comparison to the Giant Rain, for instance, is 453 millimeters, which is made to be a long bike anyway. It's an enduro bike. The fork offset. Now this is what's kind of got me. So on all those trails, on the flowy trails, on the smoother trails, it felt really, really fast, really, really efficient. It carries speed quite well. With the suspension set up right, it definitely carries speed over the choppy stuff, but the front end gets really twitchy. So coming into any sort of rough stuff, as soon as your front wheel gets deflected, which can be partially too much air pressure, stiff wheels, so you get all that adjusted to account for it and whatnot. But whenever you get into rough stuff, the front end, as soon as it gets deflected or twitchy, it really wants to tuck in and tuck under. It really kept giving, regardless of what I did with the setup, I got it more subtle and more controlled, but it always had the feeling of wanting to tuck whenever it got out of shape or trying to cut a tight berm, or even doing cutties. If you cut it too hard, I'll kind of see if I can describe it. So as you're rolling in and you turn, as soon as that turns at all, it wants to do that. So it's like the front wheel is too far behind. So they've followed along with manufacturers like Yeti at the moment, where they're going the long reach, the slack head tube angle, and then bringing the shorter fork offset to create a good package there for handling. So with this bike with the steeper head angle, which is a 66.5 degree head angle, with that head angle and the short 44mm offset fork, it feels like the wheel is underneath you. They've got a short stem to try and counteract that a little bit, so it's a 40mm stem as well. So that's playing a part to counteract that wheel being too low underneath you, but it definitely needs a slacker head angle if it's going to try and get away with that shorter fork offset. So I think the weakness of this bike is that short fork offset and maybe the short reach as well. You could probably upsize frame size if you were looking for a bike like this. So I'm 174 centimeters. The bike itself, riding along, doesn't feel small, doesn't feel too short, but that front end is, that front wheel is definitely too far underneath me when I'm trying to cutty, when I'm trying to hit corners, especially picking a rough line. You can't just put it on a rough line and hold the line through. It definitely, once it starts getting deflected, it feels like you're really holding that wheel tight to stop it from tucking underneath you. So smoother trails, it's mint. Smoother trails, it's so fast, it's poppy. It feels like a four-cross bike. It definitely feels like a four-cross bike that eats bumps. So, you know, your old four-cross bikes, they weren't eating bumps. They're really low, slammed to the ground as well. But they're real fast with a little bit of forgiveness in the back. These got heaps more forgiveness in the back. Excellent for the bumps. But once again, that front end, if they were to go back to a standard offset, a 51mm offset, I think this bike would be killer. It would be absolutely killer. It's got the short stem, the reach isn't too bad. It's a little, like I said, it's a little bit short. The back end's killer. The chainstays are 435mm, so they're on the money. It's a really agile bike. It's a really playful bike. The only thing I don't like is that tuck under the front wheel. So, and it didn't matter what I did to set it up to change it, lowering the tyre pressures, changing the fork pressures, changing the compression to kind of dial in a little bit more control of that front end, a little bit more damping. It still had that same characteristic of wanting to tuck the front. It definitely didn't give me any confidence on the rougher stuff. Didn't give me any confidence on loose, rocky stuff where you're kind of just trying to plow a line and things are moving underneath you. On the smoother stuff, I just wanted to charge harder and harder. It wanted to go. It was super easy to get up to speed and keep speed. Long cranks, obviously don't like. Poor engagement, so you can upgrade that with the DT Swiss upgraded ratchet, which is no biggie. So super simple upgrade there. Not too sure about carbon wheels. Maybe that played a part in the twitchiness at the front. Maybe it didn't. Tyres, spec with killer tyres. It's got 3C front and back, which is exactly what you want, especially to counteract this front end. So having that grip at the front definitely gives you a little bit more confidence. But if you've got smoother trails, or do a lot of all mountain riding and a lot of climbing and whatnot, this bike would be killer for you. This bike would be killer. The only thing I would change is doing something about this shorter offset, whether it's putting more travel at the front or going back to a standard offset fork. I believe it would fix the problem completely. I think the only reason it's tucking is that short offset in the absence of a slack head angle. So apart from that, everything was flawless. The guide brakes are flawless. I like them. Not heaps of power, but obviously enough. 180, 160. The dropper post. This was a standout for me. This lever is super light. So Giant's droppers have kind of copped a bit of flack over the years for being unreliable. The lever, it's the best I've felt so far, for sure. It's super light. You don't have to, it doesn't have a very long throw, so you don't have to push it heaps far, you don't have to reach heaps far for it. It sits in a really good position, you can set it up out the way. It's smooth. This probably needs a bit of a grease because it's new, but works flawlessly. And I don't think you get tired smashing that button all day, smashing that lever all day, which some dropper levers are kind of renowned for being a little stiff or just a little bit non-ergonomic, and you kind of have to move your hand to push them in. But this is on par with the Wolf Tooth for sure. So spot on Giant for that. And the seat, this dropper itself has got zero play. It feels much tighter than their old droppers. It's obviously still new, so you don't really know. But the seat itself is comfortable. which is a fresh change from what I've been riding lately too. The post works well, and the lever's killer. The forks, apart from being darted around, super supple, definitely super supple, so they feel really, really good off the top. All the chattery bumps, and I've noticed that with all the Fox gear. Anytime I jump on a bike with Fox gear, they're very supple and very smooth. When I rode the Rain Advance last year, the green one, they had the Fox 36 on it, and that's the best fork I've ever ridden on. That felt phenomenal. The grip, it didn't get darted around at all. It just held a line really, really well. And that's what kind of surprises me about the design of this bike. Going from the Rain, which to me is the best descender I've ridden so far, there's a track out at Fox Creek, Fox Long, and the bottom of that is really, really choppy and rough, and it's a really good spot to kind of separate the big dogs from the skittish ones when it comes to descending. So that Rain, out of every bike I've demoed and every bike I've ridden, that thing plowed that section and carried speed through it, so much smoother than anything I've ridden. Well, not so much smoother, but definitely smoother than anything I've ridden. So to go, and the front end is super stable on that bike. So to go from that and have a front end on this bike that's really not stable at all, not confidence inspiring or stable at all, is a little bit of a surprise. So I think they've just missed the mark with the blending the shorter offset into the rest of the design of the frame. So if you're going to run a shorter offset, which we've seen with the SBG and the Yeti concept, if you're going to go a shorter offset, you have to have the slacker head angle and the longer reach. So overall, killer whipper. If you've got smoother trails, you're not even going to notice that twitchy front end, but if you've got rough stuff where you're trying to plow through a line where maybe you're jumping on and off of a rut or bouncing through some loose rocks, you're definitely going to notice that you're going to have to hold onto that front end a little bit tighter. Apart from that, it's a whipper, it's killer. So thanks a lot to Giant Adelaide, Yatesy and the boys and girls down there for lending me the bike, and yeah, hopefully another Rain comes in soon. I can get on a 2019 Rain and give one of them a good slap as well, because I'm looking forward to riding one of them again for sure.